This video is part of the slab construction series in which I'll be demonstrating how to create a sculpture of a parrot using a slab of clay wrapped around newspaper. So we start off with a couple of pounds of clay, pounding it together into a ball, and then slapping it with our palms to flatten it, putting it down on a board and pounding it with the palm of one hand to flatten it out even more, and then beginning to toss the slab to stretch it out. So notice that I'm picking it up by one end and tossing it at an angle so that the bottom edge or the bottom part of the slab hits the table while the rest is still in the air, and its own momentum stretches it out. And you pick it up by the back edge, and that becomes the top edge each time, and so you stretch it out evenly that way. It takes a little while to get the hang of it. Most people make the mistake of throwing it straight down, and it's not about how hard you throw it. And then some crumpled up paper is placed on the slab, and the slab rolled around it, and it all is packed tightly together. The purpose of the newspaper is to support the clay while you are pressing on it and shaping it. And it will compress and be really firm, but it won't be so rigid that it will cause the clay to crack as it dries and shrinks around it. And then it will just burn away when it's fired in the kiln, having served its purpose. So I'm holding it in my hands and not laying it on the table and working on it, because I'm able to keep pressure as I'm applying with one hand and keeping the clay around the paper, keeping it all tight as I am forming and smoothing and shaping, creating a rough shape of the bird's head, outlining its beak with my thumbnail. I'm not using much water because if we get it too wet, it will be hard to handle. It will be really messy, and it makes it softer. So I find that there's enough water in the clay. I'm working quickly enough that I don't need to add water to it. Now here I'm cutting out shape for a second wing. I've already attached one wing, and notice that I did put water on the contact side of that slab so that it would be sticky and would adhere when I press it together. So the key to joining things together is a little bit of water and then pressure. Just one or the other isn't enough. Scoring and using slip isn't enough either on their own. You've got to press them together so that the pieces join. When I'm working with soft clay against soft clay, just water and pressure is all that's necessary. And if ever while you're working, you find a hole torn in it, or it cracks, then just press the clay back together or put a piece of clay over the top of it to patch it. Now right there, I found it necessary to reshape the lower part of the bird's body, and so just tore the tail off of it. And this gave me the chance to thin out that mass of clay at the tail and then reattach it. Now here I am creating the two legs, very short little cone shapes, and moistening the end of each one and pressing it on. They're kind of fat legs for a little parrot. These legs are normally really skinny, but being clay, they need to be substantial. So I roughly shape the legs before attaching them, and then refine and sculpt them once they're attached. Don't make the mistake of sculpting them with a lot of detail before you attach something, because the danger is that you wouldn't press it hard enough to really join them together, because you might mess up all the detail. And then when it dries, shrinkage happens, and whatever it is that's so nicely detailed falls off. So attach the piece of clay first, make sure it's attached, and then detail it. So next I'm going to make some toes, rolling out really short coils. For this little bird. And the toes are overlapping onto the foot and then extend out just a little ways. Don't want to have a long skinny piece that sticks out unsupported, because it's just going to get broken off. I've had that happen many times. It's a hard lesson. How thin can it be? And make it through the process. So they're thick at the base and thinner toward the tips, also to give them more strength. Don't want to forget the back toes. So at this point, I don't want to put too much detail into it because the clay is really soft and it's hard to make fine detail when the clay is really soft and mushy. So I'm going to let them harden a bit overnight before I do a lot of work on texturing the legs and the feathers and the eyes and beak and so forth. Put the little eyeball on the side of his head. So this one is inspired by the peach-faced lovebirds. We have a flock of that comes in our backyard. So pretty and so lively. They're very small, maybe about 6 inches tall. So this is a scaled up version of those small parrots we have in Phoenix. They add a bit of color to the landscape. Sculpting something that is from nature, or from life, you really get to understand the structure of it, the shape of its body, and how the parts relate to each other. You know, things that I found as I was working on it that I hadn't really paid close attention to their skeletal structure. And since I made this sculpture and looking at the birds in life, I realized that they have wider shoulders than I've created here. So that's one of the benefits of sculpting something from life, is you really get to see you develop a new appreciation of it, and you understand it in a new way. So here I am I'm placing some thin plastic and then creating the suggestion of lines of the feathers by drawing a comb across the plastic, pressing in the clay, and the plastic keeps the clay from just creating a raked, rough surface. If I just drew the comb over the clay without the plastic, there would have been a lot of rough edges created. So now it's the day later. It's been wrapped in plastic, but is approaching the leather hard stage now. So it's stiff, not as easy to push around and flex. It's firm, but can still be manipulated. And the main thing I'm interested in doing now is refining the surface and developing it just a little bit more, and getting it ready for firing. Creating some delineation on the wings, line showing where the wing is overlapping the body. I'm just describing a line. I'm not cutting deeply, just creating an edge where it's giving the effect, the appearance of being a layer over the top of the body. Now I am preparing it for firing by piercing the body, primarily on the ends where the clay was pinched together originally, and in places is more than an inch thick. I poked through those areas with a wooden skewer, poked through until I felt the newspaper, and then cover over those openings on the exterior. So just underneath that thin layer of the little bit of clay on the surface is a channel going through the solid parts of it so that the water inside the parrot can come to the surface. Keep it from blowing up when it's fired. So that's it. It's going to have to dry for a couple of weeks. I hope you enjoyed this video.